So I worked with a startup for sometimes 3 months, 6 months, sometimes more. And then even when the project ended and we stayed in good terms, it never really like came through to a point where, where that equity was actually worth the time investment and the effort that I put into it.
And I think the challenge of being a fractional is that you have a number of different inboxes, and how do you route them into one place where you can easily turn it into actions. Like looking for product market fit as a founder and learning how difficult that is, especially if you're too focused on the product, not focused on the distribution, is just it changed me a lot.
Welcome to Oh Frac, the podcast where top fractional leaders share their wins, struggles, and stories from the trenches. Hosted by Adir Ron. Welcome to Oh Frac, the podcast where we dive into the world of fractional leadership, the wins, the struggles, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adir Ron. And today we have with us Konrad Jarocinski. Is it Jarosinski or Jarosinski?
Jarosinski.
Yeah, Jarosinski. Okay, thank you. So Konrad's a self-proclaimed Swiss Army knife with over 15 years of experience in ops, product, AI, data, even marketing. From enterprise gigs at companies like Emirates and Visa to the startup scrappiness of Booksy and CAD labs, Konrad's built a career out of adapting fast and scaling even smarter. Now, Konrad's a fractional COO and chief of staff. And he's embedded in the trenches of multiple startups and helping them untangle chaos, build GTM engines, and grow with data at the core. And last but not least, Konrad's also got a foot in the VC waters too. And he's an angel investor scouting deals across Europe and Asia. So welcome, Konrad.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. So let's kick this off with an icebreaker question. You call yourself a Swiss Army knife. What's the weirdest skill on that tool?
Oh, wow. I guess weirdest. I'm definitely not an admin person by trade, but I've done a lot of, because, juggling things as CEO, you sometimes do very, like things that you never heard of. Like, I don't know, I guess the laws of Swiss, operating in Switzerland, and Swiss law. I think that's something that I never sort of thought that it's going to become an interesting skill in my tool set, is understanding how to operate a service business in Switzerland and navigate the challenges.
What's different in Switzerland compared to other parts of Europe, for example?
Yeah, I think what I found is, and that's, I think it's just they're very, very strict with a lot of things. And you have to be very timely when you submit your, even financial reporting and everything. So you have to just watch out, like in terms of how you deliver the numbers. And I obviously, like, each country has its own quirks. The German language doesn't help as a person not speaking German. So that's definitely why some of the slip-ups happened, and that's why I sort of learned, ways around it.
Okay, so that is indeed an interesting skill set to have on your tool belt. Cool. So let's talk a bit about your journey and your background, or I like to call this segment "How the Frac Did You Get Here?" So, again, looking at your vast career and shuffling between enterprise and then, Booksy, which blew up, and other things that you did along the way, help us kind of plot a chart through your journey there.
Yeah, I started off as a data analyst. I worked a lot with data and AI in my early days as a consultant. Work across different geographies from California to New Zealand. I moved around in different roles. As you mentioned, I started probably working with the biggest clients like Emirates, Visa. So I touched the corporate world, but also worked with SMBs at the time, and I felt that the lack of urgency, if you will, in some of the corporate world clients was not something that I was interested in long term. So I moved to startups and scale ups full time, probably back 7 years ago. And that still involves working with either with clients or in house. Yeah, you mentioned Booksy. Before that, I was running innovation labs and data science teams in service companies, New Zealand, and then in Poland. When I moved to Booksy, I think that was really massive inspiration when I met the founders of Booksy and how they managed to scale the business to the size and build an amazing product, and that sort of pushed me into the direction that probably where I'm at right now. So obviously, as you work in startups, you tend to pick up more things. I did realize that I'm a generalist at my core a long time ago, but it was still within certain bounds, right? That was still within, I don't know, AI field, like generalist in an AI field. So I was doing pretty much an end to end from sales to data analysis. But I figured at some point in my career that I'm ready to step into more senior roles in startups. That's how I started being a COO at CAD Labs, which is a token engineering company in Switzerland. That's where the learning comes from. And basically had to handle everything because it is a small company. So this is where I said, okay, this is it. This is where I want to be. I like juggling things. I don't like repetitive stuff that is just within very specific narrow niche. So yeah, felt natural. And yeah, so that's where I started thinking about maybe that's the right time to set up my own thing. So yeah, co-founded Data Gems, which was the AI co-pilot for marketing agencies. Yeah, we ended up raising one round back in 2023. We were supposed to raise another round last year, but my co-founder left abruptly, and that sort of triggered the moment where I became a fractional, because at first I still wanted to have the business, to keep the business and try to push it, but I was looking for another revenue stream to keep the other business alive. But I touched fractional life in the past. I had fractional roles in data before I moved to doing fractional gigs as for a living. And yeah, I just loved it. I think it's just it plays to my strengths because I definitely was thinking about going fractional at some point in my career. Sort of my situation with my startup pushed me to do it sooner rather than later. But in the end, I just love it. I think working with clients and leveraging the experience, all the stuff that I learned as a founder, all the stuff that I see as an investor. So just sometimes switching between those two hats when I work with my clients. It's just, I think it's the place where I want to be.
Interesting. We'll get back to your investment side in a few minutes, but I'm wondering. So today you're doing both COO and chief of staff. How do you see in a fractional capacity, of course? So how do you see those two converge, or maybe even I would say what I think would be more interesting, at least for me, is where do you see those two differ, and how do you define the difference, and how can you really tell a customer, you guys need me as a COO or you guys need me as a chief of staff, or is it a combination of both?
Good question. Yeah, in a lot of situations, I step in as a COO, a fractional COO, where there is no COO at all. All right. So sometimes it's just one of my clients, it's a bootstrap business, so CEO needed support on operations and strategy, and that basically it made sense for this to be more COO because it touches on also some of the admin side of things, right? So it's closer to the core role of chief operating officer as a standard in any startup. So I think that in some cases this is like easy way to differentiate. If the role is also ops heavy, it makes sense for this to be fractional COO. For some clients, for instance, for one of the recent clients, there is a COO in place, and there are special projects that need to be run, right? So this is where chief of staff is probably a better name for the role. That generalist that goes across different business areas, works on projects, ships an MVP of a project, handles over to a specific person and moves on to something else. And so I think this is how I sort of define chief of staff, is working close to the board, close to the founders. Still very depending on the stage of the startup, but definitely hands on. Juggling things. I think where chief of staff is also becoming interesting is that AI has changed the game. I think if a chief of staff is AI native, the impact that you can make across the company is can make very very quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're going to be seeing even more how AI can impact workflows and bring in that value for those people who are highly skilled and really know how to leverage AI. It's going to be a game changer. I think it's going to be. I think I remember. I don't remember who said it, but there was a debate on will AI take my job? And I saw a lecture about it, and someone said AI is not going to take your job. Someone who's better at you than AI is going to take your job.
I agree with that. I think this is a fair assessment. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I'm wondering because you're doing both COO and chief of staff, and if there's when you are coming in more as a chief of staff, when companies that are more established and they have their COO, is there tension there between between you and the COO, because essentially you could have been at his position.
Right.
So I'm wondering how that plays in terms of tension between you and the team.
I think it's a fair point, and this tension could occur. I think the way I think about it is that I'm not tied to titles, right? I think once I became a founder, sort of titles and roles became irrelevant for me. I don't mind what I'm called, and I always make that clear. If there's a COO in place, I'm not here to take your job, right? And I'm here to make your life easier, and that's how I position my role, and need to make it. You're right, it can create tension if you don't handle it well. So just position yourself how you can solve COO's problems and make their life easier, and that's gonna go a long way, right? And I think to that point, my focus in many cases when I come in as a chief of staff is very AI centric, right? So just trying to see, look, I'm here to make the company more efficient, so that you have less ops or admin heavy stuff to work on. So it's essentially value proposition to me.
Got it. Okay, so let's talk a bit about your investment background. So how did you end up being an angel investor, and where do you see kind of this intersection between, on one hand, being a fractional leader working with a lot of, I assume, early stage startups or earlier stage startups, and then on the other hand also looking from kind of the other side of the room as an angel investor?
I love it. I didn't think about sort of this move that much. I mean, I felt okay. Initially, I thought about it as a way to differentiate, from investment perspective, right? So I was obviously heavily involved in my own startup, so a lot of my investment, my time, money went into that, right? But so I felt okay, maybe there's a way for me to have that as a sort of different way to invest. So initially that was just that, but I soon realized that that's a really great hack for funders to understand the other side of the equation. Because if you're a founder, there's no way, unless you come from the finance background or you worked at VC or family office, there's no way for you to know all those things. Like what is the motivation of investors? Like what is the motivation of angel investors or institutional investors? So you don't know that world, right? You can obviously watch YouTube videos or try to learn from the internet, but it just was a great opportunity for me to learn and understand what investors are looking for in startups at the early stage, because it helped me as a founder. It helped me structure my narrative. It helped me to work on things that we as an investors picked up on in our deal flow. So essentially, it's also, I think, it's also great fun, because you're helping the startups achieve their goals, both by chipping in a small ticket, but also by your time, obviously, depending on what type of investor you want to be. There's I did 15 investments in total, and there's a handful that I'm very close with, because I have the expertise in what they're doing. I'm really vested into they're succeeding because they're solving a problem that I see myself or I want to get solved. So I'm definitely going the extra mile and spending more time, if they want, obviously offering my help there. And I think this is great, because it's I just try to be like an angel investor that I wish I had, and this I think is you can't go wrong with that.
I think that's a great perspective. Like be the angel investor you wish you had. Is a great motto. Did you end up? Just curious. Did you end up investing in any company that you were a fractional in? Did you see that kind of? Did you have that kind of interconnectivity on both sides?
Not yet, but I do. I do. Yeah, I do take that in the sort of. It can be part of the equation, so it can be part of the setup. I do fractional work for equity, which is sort of pretty much similar thing, right? Because I'm instead of cash, I'm investing my own my own time. So I have some bets where I work for equity only, and so essentially that's angel investing with my own time rather than my own money. Obviously, slightly different, but yeah.
And if you don't mind sharing how, like, I'll kind of share from my background that I have done some deals in the past as fractional CMO where I took equity instead of cash, or sometimes hybrid deals where there was significantly lower cash module on expense of higher equity. And what I realized is that, and again, maybe it was just me, that at least back then, I haven't done it for a couple of years, I have to admit, but when I did it, I guess maybe I wasn't good enough at my due diligence, to be honest, because in literally every single time, it ended up with that equity being worth zero. So I worked with a startup for sometimes 3 months, 6 months, sometimes more. And then even when the project ended and we stayed in good terms, it never really came through to a point where where that equity was actually worth the time investment and the effort that I put into it. And that's why today, when cash strapped founders come to me and say, "Hey, let's make a hybrid deal," I always say, "I'm sorry, I'm not doing hybrid deals, and I'm not doing equity based deals. I have a mortgage, I have 2 kids." I need the paycheck just like you do. And if you want to work with me, then you got to pay. And we can talk about maybe equity bonuses, but there has to be very solid cash foundation
Mm-hmm.
for this engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So wondering how that works for you, if you're
Yeah,
willing to share.
it's very good question. I did have similar situations in the past where I worked for equity and it's worth zero. So I definitely appreciate the challenge of picking the right bets, right? I think the way I worked it out is that I have the base clients that are cash only or cash plus equity, and I have one or two bets, not more than that, where I'm basically working for equity only, right? And obviously, like just to give you a sense, well, there are some situations where you're very hands off and just doing a little bit of work, like few sessions a month, so that's probably like 0.5 equity sort of percentage. But there are like stuff that are bigger bets, which are closer to 5%, where you're more operational. And yeah, but to your point, I'm also very picky for those bets. It's I definitely lost some. I mean, I learned in a way that it was early days for me of advising or being fractional for equity. So I learned the hard way, as you might say. But I only have very limited now equity only clients.
Got it. Okay. And I guess that maybe as someone who's also angel investing, you're probably better at due diligence
I
today
think
than
I
you
got
were.
better. We'll see about that in a couple of years. But
Let's put something in the calendar for a couple of years and we
there
can
you go.
revisit the topic.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that definitely helps. Because I can spot like when people are not gonna raise
Yeah.
sooner, right? Or like they have a very low chances of raising and just not spend my time, or just be honest and give the advice that I wish I had. Right. So that's I think that's the way I think about it. If I see someone that I don't want to invest time, like work for equity only, I'll just tell them. I'll tell them why I think they might struggle with getting investments. So I try to turn it into something positive in a way that is feedback, actionable feedback. So instead of spending my time working with them as a fractional, I'll say, okay, looking at your deck or looking at your value proposition, I would focus on X, Y, Z, because I think it's not strong enough for you to raise any capital right now.
Interesting. I think I hope the founders understand how valuable this piece of advice
I know
is.
it's sometimes harsh, but obviously I'm doing it in a civilized manner, but I know as a founder, I remember how I sometimes I was getting a lot of notes, a lot of yeses. Oh, good luck, and I would rather from time, looking back in time, I would just say, okay, someone should have told me, no, that's not gonna fly. Like, no, just think about it, because you're gonna you're basically your entire net worth is going into your startup. Maybe have a think about how you're going about that.
Just give me the harsh truth.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think as
I
long as
totally
it's
agree.
actionable, I think as long as it's actionable, it might hurt at first when you read it and say someone that is I'm not I'm not a professional investor. I'm an angel investor that is working with syndicates. So a lot of due diligence is not done by me, right? I do my own due diligence before I commit my own money, but it's already pre-filtered, if you will,
Yeah.
by the fund or by the syndicate that I'm part of. But I still pick up on things that we, as syndicates, we disqualify startups on. And when I see it with the founder that is looking for fractional work and is trying to get an equity deal, I said, I'll not be able to help because, on my checklist, you'll need to look into that.
Yeah, I agree. Funny enough, I was at a mentor event yesterday. I'm working with an accelerator here based in Amsterdam, and they had a kind of a mentor meet startup event last night. So I went in, and there were like 20 something startups presenting and pitching to a group of, I don't know, 50, 60 mentors. Some great ideas, some great founders. And then I went out and I kind of picked the 4 or 5 that were a bit more interesting. And to each one I went and said, I want to start off with the hardest question I can think of. And some of them are in AI and agentic workflows type of solutions. I'm like, how, what sets you guys apart? Why will you still be around in 6 to 12 months with AI advancing so fast? And I remember one of the founders just looked at me. He was dumbfounded. He was like, no one has ever asked me that question. I don't know how to answer it. I was like, okay, so go ahead and think. Here's my LinkedIn. Here's my email. Think about an answer. Let me know when you have an answer, and then let's talk.
That's perfect. Yeah.
And I think that, asking that hard question, or like you said, give me the hard truth straight in my face. Be nice about it. You don't have to be rude, obviously, exactly. But give me the hard truth. I think people value that way more than just smiling and nodding these days.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so let's kind of segue that into our next section, which is maybe you can share with us a horror story, or I like to call this part your Frac'd-up moment. So a horror story from your career, maybe from your fractional career, but not necessarily, maybe from the investment side as well. Something that kind of left a mark, but also kind of gave you some insight or some new learning out of it.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that are connected to one common sort of trait, which is I used to have a pretty bad system of tracking things that are coming in semi-regularly and that were connected with some admin related things when I was a fractional COO. And when you're juggling number of clients, right, then you don't spend that much time, or you just have, a few hours a month with one client. And if you don't have a strong system about it, that can be deadly in a way. And that happened to be a few times. So one was definitely connected again with Switzerland and German, misunderstanding German. So trusting Google Translate too much. And where I thought I understood the next steps and missed the deadline because of that, which obviously normally translates into penalty. So this is like learning the hard way because it's a penalty for the business. So I think that helped me build a better system for tracking those things when they come. And I think the challenge of being a fractional is that you have a number of different inboxes, and how do you route them into one place where you can easily turn it into actions. So I think there were early days of me juggling number of clients, and things did slip, right? Not on just that one account, but I think I understood that inbox is my bottleneck, and I had to do something about it. So building some small automations that understand turning specific types of emails into Todoist tasks or Asana, whatever you use. That's something that I guess it will help a lot. And I think there's a lot of those things. I think in fractional work, what definitely is a struggle is how do you manage your calendar? How do you manage your availability? How do you manage your inbox with number of clients? All right. So I think not managing that properly or letting things slip just made a lot of horror stories over the weekend where I had to cancel plans or change plans. And obviously with family, that's definitely tough. So I'll say that's how I learned the hard way. I think like horror stories, I still think startups are really messy and really, really tough. So working out with your co-founder is I obviously my story is just one, right? That we parted ways, and in a really tough moment because we had some really good interest from investors, but if the CTO is not there, obviously everything falls apart. But I think I just felt this was also a learning for me. I took some time off, managed to still keep the business going, and found sort of a relief in fractional world where I which I fall in love with, and so I think it's just that messy part of and that difficult part of startups, understanding that this is just like everything just turns into something new, and turning things around is the skill that you as a fractional, I think you have to possess and work on, because like stuff will happen, like whether it's missed deadline or missed meeting or a client that doesn't pay, right? You have to have systems for dealing with this sort of stuff, right? I think what helped me in those war stories of I think now in fractional time, I think being a founder first and then going to fractional, it helped me a lot, because I mean there were so many like small things, like missing something, because I'm when there's only 2 people in the business or 3 people in the business, like literally everything is on you, because the rest of the team just builds, right? So I think when you see like things like falling off your plate, or you have to pick it up and handle, I don't know, authorities or legal stuff, it then helped me. So all the mistakes that I had as a founder, I think one of the biggest mistakes as a founder, that helped me and shaped me as a fractional as well, is that there's this saying which I love, is that first time founders are obsessed with products, second time founders are obsessed with distribution. And I think
interesting. I love it.
And I think this is something that I religiously tell every first time founder that I speak to and or mentor or just see the deck, right? Whenever I see someone falling in love with in the product, not in the problem, it's something that shaped me. And I'm that's where I get really direct when I see someone just, okay, like product person building a product with no idea about distribution. This is like not even a red flag for me not picking up the assignment, but also like being, okay, redirect. Look, there's this saying, it's 100% true. I've been there. I was that first time founder that was obsessed with the product, because I have a lot of product background, and I felt that I'm gonna find a way to sell the product because I understand the market. But it's not like that, right? So I think this is like looking for product market fit as a founder, and learning how difficult that is, especially if you're too focused on the product, not focused on the distribution, is just, it changed me a lot.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing, first of all, and I'm going to steal that sentence if that's okay, because I 100% agree. I've seen so many founders that are obsessed with their product, and I do know this another saying, which is don't fall in love with your product, which is true and yet very hard not to do for founding members, and I love that kind of very clear distinction, product versus distribution. Awesome. Okay, let's switch gears and let's turn this into a bit of a quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, a few quick questions, and answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
That's good.
So, fact or fiction, or as I like to call it, frac or fiction. I've heard it's been thrown around with some founders, so wondering what's your take on it. Fractional execs can't drive real impact because they're not around enough.
Fiction, I think, and like I don't know how much comments can I make, but I guess it depends on the role. But in general, I think good fractional exec can make impact even with 10 hours per week. Right, in some cases even 5 hours, right? Because I see a lot of high quality fractional CFOs doing 5 hours per week with a startup, and that's enough to like at the early stage to make substantial impact. I wish I had fractional CMO when I was a startup founder, and that 5-10 hours would be enough if I had a quality CMO, fractional CMO.
Cool. What's the number one toolkit in your what's the number one tool that you swear by in your toolkit?
Oh, there's a number of them. I mean, calendar, Notion calendar helps me with organizing my work. Toggle helps me with tracking the hours now that I have higher number of clients. Slack is the necessity. I'm not the major, like the biggest fan of Slack, but I still find it useful given the number of context switching that happens and different time zones. Yeah, I think Perplexity. Obviously, there are tons of AI tools that they are coming to my sort of mix of tools. Perplexity has been a major the sort of the tool out of AI stack that has become my must tool.
Okay. Dream client versus nightmare client, or what would be for you the definition of a dream client and versus the definition of a nightmare client?
Good question. I initially thought the dream client is bootstrap business for me after like being involved in VC world and seeing how difficult it gets for funders and people around the funders. So after being in sort of VC funded business myself, I initially thought that bootstrap would be the way to go, but it's not that anymore. I think like to me what matters is like the dream client is small enough for me to have immediate impact, right? So I think the size or the scale matters to me. I think at certain size the politics comes into play, even in startups. And for fractional, it's tough because you're around just a few hours or 10-20 hours per week, right? So the nightmare clients would be like slightly bigger startups, even with fractional chief of staff, right? They sometimes need fractional chief of staff. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's just the number of parties and it's tough to work with, even when you're full time. When you're fractional, is a nightmare. So I would say steadily growing business. Ideally, it can be VC funded, but ideally, definitely cash flow positive and sustainably raising. This is where I love to come.
Got it. Okay. Where do you see the future of fractional?
Mm-hmm. I think I wonder when we're gonna see different more roles in fractional world, because I think like everyone is used to fractional CMOs, fractional CFOs. There's less now fractional CPOs. They're coming into play. Fractional COOs, right? So I think like the majority is still between CMOs and CFOs. So I think what we're gonna see is different roles, and I do believe that gig economy is the new trend, is the new meta, where people will work. Maybe they will not call it a fractional, but they will. Some of the freelance work will move towards fractional. So I wonder how technical positions will evolve in the fractional world, how product positions will evolve in the fractional world, because I think there's a lot of space to innovate there. And with AI, I'm only gonna be I think we're gonna only be seeing more justification for fractionals, because there's no need for a full-time person. There's no need for a full-time COO in many cases. And I think people not just in the US but also in Europe are picking up on that. I think that's like the demand is showing that, but also the number of people that is doing that. So it's sort of rising at the same time. But yeah, I think we're gonna see more roles in ops in products. So outside of those core CMO, CFO roles.
Cool. Okay, so final question for today. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who's just thinking about going fractional, what would that advice be?
I know it's not always possible, but I still think that one of the biggest, there are two the biggest hacks that I see: becoming a founder first, because I see like the way people now sort of work with me and understand that I've been there as a founder. So this is something that I wouldn't be possible for me to land some clients if I weren't the founder, because I think it's a different, like the communications shifted and sort of the value add is different, because I can show like the sort of the war scars, if you will, and that's one thing.
They know you're a part of them in a way.
Yeah, yeah,
You've
exactly.
been in that seat. You know the pain points. You like say you have the scars to show and the war stories to tell.
Exactly. So I think this is like the biggest hack. I still think, like, while I initially thought that becoming an angel investor is going to help me as a founder, it does help me as a fractional, because it helped me with doing due diligence, placing bets. So like, I think even though you saw it yourself, even though that the equity that you got for the equity only gigs, right, is worth zero. Like at the early stage, it's part of the learning curve, right? So I wouldn't necessarily at the early stage, I wouldn't. If you can do bets and place bets and learn from it, I would place them and learn, because then it will help you pick better cash clients as well.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. But yeah, I agree that I think that I can say today that my due diligence was not good enough when I took equity only type of work. So now if if I'm ever at a point where I'm considering doing equity based work, I know for a fact that I'm going to be much more harsh on my due diligence and go much more in depth before accepting such work. So yeah, in a way that's kind of
That
like,
makes sense.
exactly. Okay. I think that's it for my questions today, and I think it's been a very interesting episode and a lot of great takeaways here today. So thank you for joining, Konrad.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, and it was a pleasure. If someone wants to be in touch, reach out, what's the best way to get to you?
I think LinkedIn is always the easiest way to get to me.
Awesome. So we'll make sure that I'll make sure your LinkedIn is available in the show notes for this episode. So again, thank you, Konrad, for joining today.
My pleasure.
And thank you everyone for chiming in, listening, watching audio, video. If you love this conversation, please subscribe, like, leave a review, follow, do all the things that people do when they like things online. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Oh Frac, and we'll see you next time.